Hello, everyone, and welcome to Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast in all of the internet. My name is Matthew Stoner.
My name is Patrick Knisley.
My name is David Howe, and boy, oh boy, we got a very special guest with us this evening. Gabrielle Genevieve joins the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, Gabrielle. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are y'all doing?
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. You are here to talk all about your game, also about a higher level, also non-violent games, maybe a little bit of cozy games. All of that is today's main topic. Mm-hmm. Also, we're going to talk about in the news, more Joy-Con drift lawsuits happening, and more other lawsuits, Nintendo versus Team Executor, some Koei Tecmo Q3 financials, and maybe David's going to eat his Game Boy Advance. Well,
don't speak too soon, man.
Stay tuned to find out more Microsoft earnings call, some GameStop stock news. We'll discuss that, and a new Animal Crossing January update.
Very good.
Before we get going on the news, how's everyone doing? How y'all?
I'm doing a lot better than I was last week, I'd say. I feel.
Dude, hard same.
What changed? Did you guys get some rest? Get some num-nums?
I don't know. I was in a funk last week, but
yeah.
I'm feeling a little better.
My cat was in the hospital last week, so I was all sorts of fucked up. But he's back home now, and I've been administering insulin to him twice a day. In fact, halfway through this podcast, I might have to go stick my cat and give him some drugs. But he's doing a lot better. He's got energy back, and it's all looking up from here. What about you, Gabrielle? How are you doing this week?
I'm doing good. Yeah, like everyone kind of said, like it's just have a little bit of like a spring in my step. You know, I'm like looking at the newspapers when I take walks, and like you see like the newspaper for your neighbor, and it's like sitting there on the ground, and it's like there's like playful days ahead, and like all these titles and headlines that are like way more positive. Like it's not like
the birds
world
are singing.
And... Yeah, no, the birds were literally singing better today. Like I swear.
That's great. That's great. Matt, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Sounds like we all have hope for the future. I love
Got
hope.
some of that changey hopey stuff.
Yeah.
Very good.
We have a bunch of quick shout outs to make. After our last episode, which was about Smash likes, it was mentioned on Discord by Cena that we forgot about Power Stone and Kirby Fighters, which Kirby Fighters...
we should have remembered Kirby Fighters. Yeah. That's on us. Yeah.
Also on Twitter, Mr. Coconutty pointed that out. I
did also want to say my buddy Baylor sent me a text with Game Boy Advance Smash like. I forget what it's called. Oh, it's called Jump Ultimate All-Stars. It was kind of like the Shonen Jump Game Boy Advance game that was kind of similar to Smash. Totally forgot about that one, too. So.
It's got Goku in it.
Yeah. If you want Goku and Smash, just play Jump Ultimate All-Stars.
And Derek Kopswa also mentioned Power Stone, as well as a game I've never heard of called Urgies. Do y'all know anything about that?
Urgies, yeah. Cloud
Urgies?
and Tifa are in that. It's a Square fighting game, an arcade game originally.
Nice. And then in last week's episode, Matt, you mentioned you were playing that wrestling game that I can't recall the name of.
Wrestling Empire.
and our friend Jay wrote back because he is part of Party World Wrestling, which you mentioned. So shout out to Jay there. And then we're doing our 100th episode next week. This is 99 right now.
That's right.
So we've got a big 100th episode special we're doing. We'll be streaming the show live. We'll be answering questions. So send us your questions and let us know what you want us to talk about. And also a quick shout out to Alexis Katsarias on Facebook, who said they were real hyped for that episode. Thanks for reaching out, Alexis. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much. It'll be nice. It's actually syncing up real well. It'll be our 2-year anniversary on the day that we're also recording our 100th episode. So there's going to be lots of hanging out, lots of maybe drinking. I don't know. You might get some giggly drunk David on that show if you play your cards right. But yeah, send in your questions. We're taking them through email, through Discord, or through Facebook. We'd love to answer them on air.
Yeah, and thanks for the questions that we got so far.
Yeah.
Many of you, Summer and DCD and Kyle and everyone put questions in the Discord. So thanks for those.
And then we have an apology we want to make. It looks.
Oh,
like.
yeah. I wanted to make an apology for last episode because at one point we were talking about Google buying up game studios, and I addressed Google directly by starting with OK Google. And so I apologize if you're a Google Home user and I triggered your device because that did happen in my house and it was confusing for a little bit. So just wanted to put that out there. I've just realized now I've said it again. So apologies if I just set it off again.
Very nice. So it's time for the news and rumors. Y'all ready to go through this?
Let's do it.
Lots of sales stuff this week. Lots of fiscal quarter earnings stuff coming through.
The shit that people listen to this show
yeah, let's dig into the money. So Nintendo put out the top 20 downloaded games for I believe for 2020 as a whole in Japan. So this is Japan specific. Not surprisingly, Animal Crossing's number 1. Clubhouse Games number 2.
That's what I'm talking about, baby.
Also not surprising, some of the big ones are there in the middle of Mario Kart and Splatoon and stuff like that. I think Human Fall Flat being number 4 is something that jumps out at me as being interesting. So that info is out there if you want to go check it out. I don't know if there's anything else that y'all want to mention out of that. We also got the recent Famitsu sales numbers for Japan. Switch still going crazy there. The hardware is like ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like 70 or 80% of all hardware sold in Japan was the Switch last year, right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. Not surprising. Japanese folk really love their portable systems. I think even with the PS5 stock shortages, which they've really had stock shortages in Japan. They've been focusing on the West a lot. But I think even if they had stock, the Switch would have still massively outsold them.
I think also like when you don't have like other kind of smaller systems anymore, it's all like consolidated on the Switch.
Yeah. I bet the PS Vita was second.
Oh,
I
miss the Vita.
Me too. I love my Vita.
Mm-hmm.
Koei Tecmo put out their financials, and the main reason we're talking about that is the Hyrule Warriors game sold over 3.5 million units as of the end of December, and that's the highest selling Warriors game so far. So David, I think it was back when this game released roughly that we made a bet, if you will. Was it a bet or was it a promise?
I'd say a wager with the devil is a little closer to what actually happened. I basically thought that this game was going to sell 10 million copies by March 31st, 2021.
Not looking so good.
Never say never, though, Patrick, because, they could put this game on a deep discount. Otherwise, though, my wager was that if it didn't sell 10 million copies, I would eat my Game Boy Advance SP NES edition. So, Nintendo, if you're listening, please massively discount Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity or fudge the numbers because I don't know if my stomach can handle it.
Well, if you eat it and you die from it, you'll get a headline, which will maybe give us listeners.
That's true. I would fucking die for this podcast, y'all.
What's good for the pod is good for life.
Like what Matthew mentioned at the top, there's some lawsuit stuff going on, as always, with Nintendo. They've been after this Team Executor. Had a trouble with that one there. And I think this is just kind of an interesting thing about the global dynamics of business nowadays, right? Like they're seeking different injunctions against them in different places, and most recently in Spain against, I guess they're selling devices, as we've talked about, that allow you to pirate games on your Switch, and Nintendo is going after them hard, and they've gotten some more some Spanish courts to issue some, obviously, like Spanish website that we're selling them or whatever to take it down. So that continues. And then
I don't have a lot of pity for Team Executor, honestly. You hear about like ROM websites getting shut down, and that's kind of sketchy, and I kind of am so on that. But Team Executor is basically being like, here's how you pirate Switch games. So it's like,
And selling.
You kind of, it's you
To
play
make money
stupid
off of it.
games, you get stupid prizes.
Yeah. It's one thing to be distributing that for free and not making money off of it.
Right.
Of somebody
exactly.
else's. Anyway, other lawsuit, like Matthew mentioned, is a new Joy-Con drift lawsuit. This time it's in Canada. There's a Canadian law firm that's trying to bring a class action lawsuit there. And I don't know how class action lawsuits work in Canada, but if we follow this, we may find out.
There's actually a really interesting podcast I listen to. I drop his name all the time on here, but the Nate the Hate podcast recently did a whole topic on this Joy-Con drift lawsuit in Canada. And they had on, I'm forgetting his name now, but it's like a YouTuber who does a lot of law stuff. And so if you're interested in this topic, I would definitely say check that out. The American law and Canadian law are like a little bit different when it comes to consumer protection stuff. So there's like a lot of weird moving pieces there, but if this law stuff interests you, it's definitely worth listening to that and getting kind of the scoop.
Nice. There was a Nintendo 64 like dev cartridge that has surfaced that has, I guess, at least in part, sort of like a beta version of the Ocarina of Time game on it. That sort of Zelda 64 that's been talked about, where there's some, I guess, areas and stuff that weren't in the original game. And this is, I guess, a big discovery for people who are specifically interested in that part of the history and that kind of thing. Y'all seen anything about this or any thoughts on this?
Yeah, one of the interesting parts is they had an item. It was called the Soul Medallion, which allowed Link to transform into Navi, the fairy, and let you like fly around Hyrule.
Cool.
That would have been awesome. Can I say that?
Yeah,
that sounded really cool. This is on like an F-Zero X test cartridge, I believe, that this was found. So no one's really sure why that was on there, but this appears to be all the stuff that was included in the Space World demo, kind of back before E3, and Nintendo was doing kind of their own big trade show in Japan. They showed off footage of what at the time was called Zelda 64, and this is the first time ever that anyone's been able to see anything more than like photographs of a TV screen of this stuff, and now people can actually play it. So it's pretty cool, especially if you're, I mean, this isn't part of the Giga Leak, this is something else, but if you're into that kind of stuff and that kind of lost Nintendo history, like, man, it's been about a year's worth of discoveries on that front. Also, something that happened last week that we didn't talk about, speaking of F-Zero X, is the artist who is the creator of Captain Falcon and a lot of really iconic Nintendo characters, and like I think the director of the F-Zero X games, Takaya Imamura, has just retired from Nintendo after like 33 or 34 years or something like that. Definitely look up some of his stuff. He came up with all the design stuff for Majora and Majora's Mask, and like he did like all the character designs in that game. I think Majora is actually like a play on his name. So definitely just wanted to give a shout out to Imamura, because man, that's a long fucking career. And like, it makes you think about all the other people that have been working on these franchises that we just don't know their names.
Yeah.
And may have had like a lot of influence on the stuff from our childhood. So just wanted to give a shout out to that before we moved on.
So you're saying there's like an artist opening at Nintendo? I mean, it's
how
like a dream job.
how well can you draw Captain Falcon is the question.
I know, right?
Yeah. Just practice.
Yeah.
David, is Captain Falcon that bounty hunter that we talk about?
Yeah, the one from the future bounty hunting game that's coming out.
He's a guy who never leaves his car and only ever races and doesn't do any bounty hunting on foot. Okay, let's leave it at that.
All right. This next item I'm going to throw to you, Matthew, because the last few weeks you've been like, hey, can we talk about this in the news? And we've been like, no.
This is true. They've done that to me. Long story short, there's a listing that appeared on Amazon Japan for Apex Legends Champion Edition coming out February 2nd. That's the start of Season 8 of Apex Legends. So there might be Apex Legends releasing onto the Switch, which I'm excited to play Apex with some Switch heads.
Yeah, that's been one that I haven't really picked up on any other platforms, but definitely I think free to play games are really fun on the Switch because you can just kind of pick them up and go. So down to try that out for sure.
Cool. And you're welcome, Matthew. I kid. Moving on, we've got into sort of non-Nintendo big gaming news stuff. Vicarious Visions, which is a game studio that is owned by Blizzard, is being folded into Blizzard, much to making a lot of people, gamers who follow this, upset, because they're kind of tearing apart a good team there. They did the like Tony Hawk Pro Skater games, right? And something else.
I think they did Crash Bandicoot too, maybe.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Skylanders.
Hey man, Skylanders was the shit for like 9 months.
Yeah.
Toys to Life were a thing for a long time.
Yeah. So I guess that's a bit of a bummer, especially if you're a fan of those franchises.
Yeah. It's always like an inevitability, I think, a lot of times with game studios that they'll get like folded into bigger ones. But yeah, like Blizzard and like EA and Ubisoft don't have a great track record with keeping those teams intact when purchasing. So time will tell. I don't really know exactly what's going on, if there's any like shakeup or anything, but hopefully all those people get to keep their jobs.
Yeah, the murmurings on Reddit are saying that Blizzard is working on Diablo 2 remake, and that Vicarious Visions is helping out with that release.
Featuring Crash.
On a skateboard.
Yeah, on a skateboard.
Toys to Life.
And scene.
The very large Chinese company Tencent, it is being reported, made a record number of mergers and acquisitions deals in 2020. You should check out this. Everybody should check out this GamesIndustry.biz article where it lists all the like amount of stake or what's the word I'm looking for? Like how they increased their percentage stake in various companies or bought so much of them. It's like a list of like 30 different things they did. We talk about Tencent a lot because of this.
Yeah.
They are creeping on owning everything.
Yeah.
It's a little bit scary.
Well, aren't they in talks to acquire Take-Two?
That's the rumor as well. That is a rumor. There's no.
Okay. Well, that would suck, I think.
Yeah.
Right? That seems like not good for anybody.
Part of it is that like what they have a lot of I don't know, it seems like mobile games is a lot of what they do, right? And I don't know, mobile games are fine, but like I don't know, it just seems a little scary. Why do we not like Tencent?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I just get really worried about like censorship stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
with the Chinese government and kowtowing to foreign pressure in that way. You know, like I just the other day watched, or last night, I watched Kong Skull Island because I'm trying to do my fucking homework before Godzilla versus Kong. Okay, it's very important that I get up to date on the canon. But that's a movie that's partially produced by Tencent, and I feel like you can feel when that is the case. It always kind of feels like everything is played a little bit safer when stuff is marketed for Chinese audiences, because there's all these censorship rules with what you can and can't show. And
because they're all like CPC, yay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they were just like constantly talking about how great the CPC was. But no, but it's like, I don't know, just like that makes me worried, especially with a company like Rockstar who would be affected by this. You know, not that like, you know, Rockstar's edgelord kind of attitude wasn't getting a little grating to begin with, but at the same time, it's like you don't want to see that kind of nerfed. I think that just wouldn't be great for the industry, but that's just my 2 cents. That's my 10 cents.
I can't follow up with that. That's too good.
What were you gonna say, Matt?
I mean, market consolidation is always scary because it's usually anti-consumer.
Yeah.
If I'm thinking something like, you know, the cable industry, if you move into a new apartment complex, you usually have like one option for cable.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine a world where you have one
political
producer
party
or designer or developer, and it all comes from Tencent, just with different brands.
Yeah.
I guess time will tell.
All hail Tencent overlords. Let's start selling out now.
Now, when is 11 Cent going to start fucking picking up studios?
Oh boy. Okay. Moving on then. It was announced that Konami is dissolving and restructuring its gaming divisions. So I guess they had multiple gaming divisions, and now they are going to have just one large group. I've read stuff that suggests that means they could maybe make bigger, more complex games, but as we all know, Konami doesn't really make a lot of big video games.
They could make bigger and more complex pachinko machines.
Yeah, that seems what they do, right?
Yeah.
What do y'all make anything of this news, or any thoughts on this?
I'm kind of curious, like how that, if it's like all going to be slot games or like slot video games, like how are their IPs going to like survive that?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I mean, if you go to Vegas, you see old grandmas playing the Metal Gear Solid slot machines.
It's so
like,
weird.
Yeah, it's a slot is a slot, But,
yeah, it's true.
I don't think that they're getting out of video games. I think that it's been all quiet on the Western Front recently, but or the Eastern Front. But I think that ultimately we'll be seeing a lot of and there's been rumblings about this for a long time about IPs being snatched up by Sony, or even there's been a lot of rumors about Blue Point working on a Metal Gear Solid remake of some nature. Now that's just a rumor, but that'd be cool. They're here in Austin. But yeah, we'll see. I don't think this is the end of like Konami in video games, but
yeah, especially with those IPs, they're not going to let that go. Like they just want to probably get back like on track into like becoming a name again, because like Konami's kind of fallen off. It feels like in some ways.
Yeah, for sure.
And then some Microsoft news here. For like, I don't even know, was it 6 hours, 12 hours? Microsoft announced that the Xbox Gold price was increasing from $60
they doubled the price
a year to $120 a year.
Excuse me, Patrick. It's $60 for 6 months.
Oh, sorry, 6 months.
That's how they framed it. They didn't say $120.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
They went from $60 a year to $60 per 6 months.
Yeah, see,
same amount.
The blow.
Same amount. But then they immediately, well, not immediately, but like people got pissed, I guess. I mean, it was a very brief period of time, and they said, "Sorry, never mind." Which begs the question of what the fuck happened? Like, did they not expect that backlash? Was it a PR move or something? Like, we're all skeptical in this day and age that when stuff like this happens, that it's like intentional.
I don't think it was a PR move. I think it was just a really dumb mistake.
Yeah, I think the people at the top totally knew. Like they pretty much like the people up there were just like all their corporate execs were like, "Oh no, we can totally increase it. Don't worry about it." Like because they can afford it, and it just kind of like gets lost on everybody else because they're making decisions kind of based on that bottom line.
If it was a PR move, they would have announced this and then walked it back without printing a bunch of cards to send to retailers.
That's true.
Price, you know
That's
what I mean?
True.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, that doesn't seem like that was a PR move to me in that regard. But do you guys have any ideas as to why they would have done this?
Well, we were talking about this the other day, the three of us, because I was like asking about how much Game Pass costs versus Gold, and it sounded like if it had gone up to 120, they'd have been the same. And maybe I think one of you even posited that argument of maybe that was what they were trying to do, push more people to Game Pass.
Yeah.
That kind of makes sense to me. That like, hey, if I'm going to be spending this money anyway, I might as well get that.
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft just wants, they want the generation of people that don't even like have TVs or have game consoles, that just are like born with iPads in their hand. You know what I mean? Like they want their subscription service. They want to reach that 2 billion gamers, right? Like that's the number they keep saying. So they really, really want to push people to Game Pass. And I think it's an incentivized thing, but that's just not how you do it. You know what I mean? You don't do it by increasing the prices of your other things. I don't know. Matt, do you have any kind of input on this?
I mean, they just didn't increase the price just a little bit. They doubled the price, which is insane. If they did it like $5 or $10, and there was some other incentive to the user by having more games for Gold or deeper discounts on Microsoft games, or something other than we doubled the price.
Yeah.
Period. I think it would have came off a little bit better.
Hey, they did have something, Matthew, and it's apparently still true, and that's that free-to-play games are now free-to-play. Because apparently you used to have gold.
Well, they only did that when they walked it back.
Right.
So whenever they walked it back, they're like, we reverted it. And you can play free-to-play games for free now.
So it was only after. Yeah, that's true. Never mind. I take my point back.
It's okay, though. I mean, I don't know. Just Microsoft doesn't really understand how to do public relations, I think. I don't know. I think they've got some issues there. They need to figure that out.
And while we're talking about Microsoft, this is kind of an ongoing news item because this happened the day we're recording this, and I think even kind of late in the day. So the big headlines are still kind of coming out. But Microsoft had its fiscal conference call, because that's how people are doing it these days. And there was some of the big points coming out of this for Xbox and for games is that Game Pass has 18 million subs. They got a ways to go to get to that 2 billion gamers. Mm-hmm. But that's still a huge number. I didn't mean to downplay it there. That's big.
Yeah. I think it's okay that they don't have 2 billion subs right now.
And I think it was Benji Sales. Yeah. It was on Twitter, was pointing out that means that they've roughly, estimating that they've been growing recently around a rate of 1 million new subscribers a month over the last however many months that is, which is kind of nuts, and shows how big that is. And we also, I think the Bethesda deal isn't a done deal, but if it was, the amount of money that they spent to purchase Bethesda, apparently Microsoft made twice that much in that last quarter. So in 3 months. So they could afford it, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, they could afford it from all the fucking PC sales from the 90s that they've got in their bank vault. They don't really need it. They've got infinite money, it seems.
And we were talking a little bit about this before we started recording, and I don't pretend to understand what's going on here because I'm not a stock market person, but GameStop's stock has been rising like crazy because apparently it's sort of a meme, or like there's people on Reddit that are purposefully driving this stock up. Anybody else want to take a stab at this one? I'm a little bit out of the loop here.
Gabby, you want to tackle this?
Yeah, I guess I barely understand it too.
You're a stock expert.
Yeah, I know, right? No, apparently just on Reddit, there was just pretty much Wall Street was saying that GameStop stock was pretty much it's a dead stock. Nobody, they were just going to let it free fall and kind of die off. And it became a big challenge point for this subreddit. And they pretty much were all right, well, we're going to go ahead and drive the price up. And then apparently somebody in that community were they bought the stock or something like this, and they wanted it to go back down, and then they took it as a challenge, and then they drove the stock even higher, up because they're oh, it'll never reach I think it was $60, it was at $20, I think.
Yeah.
About a week ago or something, and then they drove it all the way up to 60, which just goes to show you the power of Reddit and meme culture, and meme culture is now in the stock market, and that's pretty much just playing with everybody's money, which is pretty interesting.
You could sell your share and buy a whole year of Xbox Live Gold.
Oh my god!
Yeah, this is just having real world implications, because the main driving point is that there are hedge fund managers or hedge funds that were shorting GameStop, and so they plan to make millions and billions of dollars from shorting this stock. And people on Reddit saw it, and they're what if we made it higher so that these hedge funds couldn't short it, and then these hedge funds would lose billions of dollars? And that's exactly what happened. I think the company Citrus or something like that, they're the parent company that have billions of dollars of investors. They had to bail out one of these hedge funds.
That's a win, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's great. I you know what? I don't feel bad if they were just trying to game the market themselves, and then you had actual people game it right back at them. I think that kind of goes to show what the market is I don't know. It's not just for the elites anymore, you know.
Yeah,
It's for 15-year-olds.
It's for memes.
Yeah, you have to be 15 to be on Reddit. That's a recent rule.
Do they have a limit?
Yeah, totally. It's 15. But I mean, it's funny. We were also before the show talking about this documentary I watched recently called Feels Good, Man, which is another very similar thing about kind of meme culture and you know, kind of bored people on the internet, like massively affecting the US political climate, you know? So that's something that I think that just as a human society, we should really start to take seriously. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's people always write off the fact that the power of people in great numbers with a lot of time on their hands. It's like really powerful. And it's like, I don't know, as we inch closer and closer to like a dystopian cyberpunk society, we need to start accepting that that's a part of our everyday lives now.
Yeah.
And this could happen overnight. It just did, you know, like, so yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, like you were talking about before too, like it's arguably a big part of why Donald Trump was president. And like, you know, Bodie McBoatface winning the name of a boat.
Well, I think Donald Trump had a bit more
impact,
worldwide impact than Bodie McBoatface.
Right. But I mean, like, that's just another that was a big example of it too. Right?
Yeah.
Like you can't
for sure
have online people determine things.
Or you can, but just be ready, you know, for Elon Musk to be the Secretary of Commerce.
Oh God, no.
All right, moving on. Our last bit of news before we get into our main topic, which kind of segs us in there nicely, which is the Animal Crossing New Horizons update for January. They just announced that, and it's the
hyper-violent game, Animal Crossing.
Yeah. To all those poor bugs and fish. The Carnival, like Mardi Gras event is happening called Festival. Happening. The update is happening on January 28th, and that event is on February 15th. And there's obviously going to be some Valentine's Day stuff and some other stuff too, I think. But so there's things to look forward to in Animal Crossing. And then also there's been a reprint of these Sanrio Animal Crossing cards in Japan and other places. And I guess they'd never come out in the US. Is that right? You said?
Yeah,
David?
they've never come out in the US, but they're coming to the US in March. So if you are a fan of Hello Kitty and Animal Crossing, man, today is your lucky day. Yeah.
And that about does it then for all of the news and rumors for this week. We are going to take a short break. And when we come back, we'll talk with Gabrielle about her game and also about non-violent, non-combat games in general. All right, so this week we are talking all about non-violent video games. We're going to talk about like games that explore other types of gameplay aside from combat and get into why there are so few and some of the good ones and all that kind of stuff. But before we dig too deep into that, Gabrielle, we'd like to talk to you about your work with Pale Room and the game Small Talk as a sort of introduction. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do in the game?
Yeah. So I'm a part of like Pale Room, which is me and my friend Chris Chapelier. And we're working on this game called Small Talk with also our friend Emily Mayo. She does the audio design and sound. But it's pretty much we're working in Unity, and it's like an interactive first person narrative game that takes place at a party at the end of the world. It features a bunch of like very surreal characters in a kind of hybrid 2D, 3D environment. I do all the art, so everything's like kind of hand drawn and hand animated.
Very cool.
And then we like kind of put that in Unity, and it plays out really nice. And then it touches on like the game itself touches on themes of like loneliness, dread, like kind of loss. There's like, and just like a lot of other human emotions, like in a variety of like vignettes that you're able to play through. And yeah.
Can you tell us about like the gameplay? Is it a dialogue choice type thing?
Yeah, it's largely driven by dialogue choice. So pretty much you're in first person, and you can walk around this party that it's like this very surreal, like kind of white room, and you walk around and you see all these characters, like one has like a bacon and egg head and the another has like a bunch of popsicles as a head. And you go up and you wander up and you are able to talk to them and interact with them and kind of find out what drives them, like kind of what they're about. And then make dialogue choices based on like pretty much how you would go to a party and select dialogue or talk to somebody, you know?
Mm. Yeah, it's from what I've played. I actually got to play it a little bit. I think the most recent time was at that Raw Paw party. I think I don't know exactly when that was. It was before the fall of man, but I was really drawn into like the way that the characters speak in that game and kind of how relatable it all is, even though it's in this very absurd world and kind of all the characters are really out of this world and kind of, you know, extra special, but then you're having real conversations that you would really have with other people. I really appreciated that in that game. Can't wait for it to come out, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So yeah, this year is hopefully the kind of
oh, great
drop point for that.
Didn't want to ask in case it, you know, it's like,
it's like due dates,
right? It's like, when are you going to have a baby?
Oh my God,
when is your game going to come out?
It feels like a baby. Like it's like 2-year baby. It should have come out 9 months.
Yeah, exactly. It'll come out like Robin Williams and Jack.
Yeah. Oh my God, I know.
That's great. Well, we all look forward to playing that. Small Talk is the name of it again, if you're listening and curious. And I'm sure that'll come up in some of our broad discussion here of non-combat games. So
not a lot of combat in Small Talk, I'd imagine.
No, there's absolutely no combat. It's just being like an interactive narrative game. It's completely the opposite of that. It's more like introspective.
So I kind of think about this topic a lot. I think it's a really interesting one. And one of the comparisons that I like to use is like movies, because I think like a lot of video games have combat as the centerpiece. And I like to imagine, what if every movie was an action movie, or what if 90% of movies were an action movie? We'd be missing out on all these other kinds of stories and experiences that are a big part of the human experience aside from fighting. And so like, I like to think about why is combat so big in video games? And I think the answer is pretty clear. It's gameplay, right? Like, gameplay drives video games more than story does. And y'all interrupt me. I'm not trying to do a monologue here.
We're going to have you do a monologue.
But like, gameplay drives games arguably more than story, right? Now that might be changing a little bit, and that's where
I feel like that's not. Yeah, I think that there's like the more like just the general public gets interested in video games, right?
Right.
Like, the more people don't really always want to go and kill somebody, you know, like that's just not in a lot of people's like, you know, daily routine, or they don't even want to emulate that. They kind of want to, you know, focus on something else, and they don't know where to go because there's not much content there, right?
Yeah. And we'll be jumping around here because I think that's a great point, right? Like, one of the reasons video games are, even though they're huge now, right? And their video games probably make more money than movies and other things, especially when you consider mobile and everything. Yeah. Is that they're still seen as for a certain audience, and that's young males or whatever, right? But
historically,
but that might be like a circular thing there with the kinds of games that are being made and that kind of thing. And if we want everybody to play video games, maybe people whose reaction times aren't as fast or whatever, or to tell stories that interest them. Sorry, go ahead, David.
No, it's okay. I think that I think you're onto something there. I think it's less like, I think it's a combination of a couple things as far as I'm concerned. I think it's like agency, right? It's like it being an interactive medium definitely means like, okay, what's the simplest thing you can do? You know what I mean? It's like back in the early days of video games, there weren't a lot of like dialogue based video games because there just wasn't, you know, it was like moving a dot around the screen or something, or shooting down missiles or you know, Pong or something like that, right?
It's movement, right?
Not like, that Pong is a violent game, but yeah, right. Yeah. But it's like, it's input, right? And the interactivity. And I think that also, you know, early on, games were seen as toys, and more specifically boys' toys, like early on, and in the age of the arcade and all that kind of stuff as well. And so I think it's the same reason that you see, back then you would see like G.I. Joe toys or Masters of the Universe, He-Man stuff. That's all like, or like Conan the Barbarian, all this kind of stuff that's like very like aggro, like male centric was, video games were caught up in that for like 2 decades, and I think now, especially now that we're seeing a lot more, like this huge wellspring of independent game developers with different ideas. And now that the industry has like matured a little bit, we're starting to see a lot more games, even some AAA games that really focus more on other elements of human nature than just destruction.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think also like that there's like, I think personally that like a lot of women have played games, throughout, like even when they was just like this kind of male dominated kind of like thing that you're talking about, like women were also playing games. It just wasn't marketed, right? It was like turned down, and you were kind of like turned away from it, but it was still happening. And so I think it's like the little vein was there, and then of course, like it doesn't make as big of a headline, with all these kind of guys playing it and kind of catering to that kind of destructive lifestyle, I guess.
It's like boys and girls toys at McDonald's. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
one's a nuclear missile and the other one's like a bow.
Yeah. It's like they both can enjoy both.
They still do that, and sometimes too, like my. That's funny that you mentioned that, because like my son is, we're raising him as a modern whatever, like, so like when you go to McDonald's and they're like, is he a boy or a girl or whatever, or they a boy or a girl, you're like, well, what are the toys? You know what I mean? Like, if I get a choice, give me the choice, not.
I know, they should do away with that. That's like so bad. Like, just have toys. Like, which one do you want?
Yeah. Anyway, that's a whole aside and a whole other topic that's important. But
we'll be doing an episode on McDonald's toys soon.
I can't wait. That sounds great.
So, moving along to another talking point for this topic is, I think there is sometimes I don't want to say confusion, but when people talk about something not being violent or not having combat, there's maybe a fear that would mean there's no stakes, or that there's no, you know what I mean? And I think that nonviolence doesn't mean there's no stakes. I think about what you just talked about with Small Talk, right? It's the end of the world. Like, that's pretty big stakes.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's definitely like when we made it pre kind of end of world, like it was just something that like, it was it definitely makes you as the player want to make decisions in a certain way, right? Like that's influencing you, and you kind of get to go around this open room, and you have to emulate that feeling of like, hey, this is it. I'm going to have to. What would you do, right? If you had that option. And I think that that's just like a different like state of like, or rather like a different set of stakes, right? Like instead of it like, you're playing an army game or you're playing like Halo, which in a way, like sometimes the world's ending in those as well. It's just like a softer take on that. And it's a more like kind of more realistic, even though it's so surreal.
More nuanced, I'd say.
Yeah.
And it's just more like you have like that conversation like with yourself and how you feel about that in Small Talk, right? Like it's how you, the player, are interacting with these characters that have these vignettes that touch on human emotion, and how would you respond to that? And I think a lot of people like go to video games, and they go to video games to like escape from those kind of hard problems and escape and to get away from the reality of like the harsh world. And it's like, it's failures. And in Small Talk, it's kind of like, nope, we're going to talk about those things.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to go headstrong into that.
Cool. And I also think about like, competitive gaming, like setting aside like obviously like FPSs and stuff, but like Tetris 99 or something, there's no violence in that, right? Like there's no...
What are you talking about? Entire lines of blocks are destroyed every time you bring something down.
I'm sorry, but blocks aren't people.
No, it's a metaphor for the Soviet bloc. Okay? That's what's going on.
But like, or sports
erasure,
sports games, or games that are competitive but aren't violent. Obviously, there's high stakes there, and people can get very invested in that, and that's this whole. Obviously, when we say non-violent games, there's like a huge umbrella of things, and I just kind of wanted to mention that.
It's a pretty broad topic.
Yeah, and also like we want to maybe dig into this separately, so maybe we won't go crazy deep into this, but the concept of cozy games, which is something we talk about every once in a while, and something like what you were just talking about, Gabrielle, like the sort of escapism. Like, you know, it's kind of funny when people are like, "God, I've had a rough day. I just want to, you know, get away and then just go kill a bunch of people online or whatever." You know what I mean? Like,
right.
But it does.
Yeah, that's definitely not a cozy time, or maybe it is for some people.
Right? Yeah, I don't know, but like,
yeah, I mean, there's something to like letting off aggression and steam in video games versus, you know, taking it out on, you know, your coworkers or your loved one or something. You know what I mean? Like,
that's
there's
totally
definitely
true.
something to that. Yeah,
it's definitely like time for yourself, and you get to kind of do something that you like is fun, right? You challenge yourself. There's all these challenges in those kinds of games, and you can win, and you're awarded, and you're kind of promoted to keep going on, and you can also play them with other people, which is really fun.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not all just like murder. You know what I mean? There's a lot of like social things happening in those kinds of games.
But maybe sometimes we want to escape to something that feels more wholesome, right?
Yeah, we want to play Animal Crossing.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think Animal Crossing is a great example of that. And there's a ton of other cozy games and
something that I don't know. Did we? We might have skipped this, but up here you have kind of a distinction. You know, kind of talking about like the Animal Crossing style games and stuff like that, where I think that also there's a bit of a assumption when people talk about non-violent games or non-combat games as being like kids games, then the more mature games with violence are games for adults. But that is just not at all the case.
Right.
Like, I don't think that there's any distinction for either, because, you know, you think about even the most kid-friendly games like you have here, like Mario Brothers or Kirby, you know, that's about like turtle genocide and like mass consumption of your enemies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and those are like, you know, they're E-rated games, but even those games are like
violent.
Predicated on violence, you know? And so it's like, and then on the other end of the spectrum, you know, you've got games like, you know, Tell Me Why, or, you know, or like Small Talk, or games that are like, that play to the height of a mature user's intelligence in that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
it's like more emotional. It's like there's just like, I think a big, like there's a huge hole in the market, I think, for like people like me who don't want to be playing a violent game, right? And I feel like there's a lot of people like that, and there's actually a lot of app games that are like more emotional, that you can kind of just like click through. You don't have to like, you know, how's my skill level gonna be? Am I gonna level up? Am I letting my team down? You're just like, you checked out. You kind of just do things for yourself, and you get to kind of like, you know, you can meditate in them too, right? There's like, and it's just like that opening of where games could go, and it's just not been, I think, sufficiently explored, especially by like, you know, larger like AAA companies and things like that.
Yeah, I think something you just said resonates with me, which is that like my wife, for example, doesn't play video games or didn't grow up playing video games, but she got really into Animal Crossing, and little things like that can grab her if it's the right aesthetic or whatever. But she's not going to be somebody who inherently is ready to like, you know, push ZR and then A and then do this, because she's not doesn't have the experience, and she's not going to spend the time to get that experience. So like, to bring people like that into the fold, we need different games and different gameplay styles and controls and things like that. Yeah,
like I think the big one was I think Goose Game, right? Like Untitled Goose Game was like that. When it hit, it was pretty much just like what everybody wanted. They didn't want like another Far Cry. They wanted this Goose Game that like everyone kind of, it looks like it's like very like lax aesthetic structure and very like low poly art, and it's just like it hit the right time. Everyone just wanted to chill out, you know what I mean, and play this game that was just it was just going to be fun, and it wasn't going to have to be like this just murderous thing, or you'd have to learn a skill set that you weren't going to be into. And then it did really, really well. And of course, like everyone's like making fun of it, or making fun of just like how like, oh, it doesn't have the greatest graphics, but it did great, and so that's just proof of the market, right?
Yeah.
People didn't want violence. They just wanted to steal a kid's glasses and traumatize them with sticking it into a telephone booth.
I know, right?
Torture, yeah. But also I feel like something I want to say too is that like I think violence can be explored without combat in a video game. Like we can have a story-based video game surrounding a war or something where we aren't doing the actual killing, but maybe we're making decisions or whatever. And I think there might be other interesting ways to, include violence or combat into video games that are being ignored, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of a spoiler for a game I've been playing recently, but I've been playing Ace Combat 7 a lot recently, which I'm loving, by the way. And I just like a good dogfighting game, but not like dogs, like planes. but they constantly bring up like the toll, like the death toll of people on the ground from planes that are shot down like over residential areas. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's stuff like that in a game where you're like, oh yeah, that's still the point of this game, is to like engage in this combat, but it like really makes you think about what you're doing. So it's not just mindless violence. You know what I mean? I feel like like another game like this that we've brought up before is like Spec Ops: The Line, which is like very much an anti-war game. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's all very much like showing you the consequences of your actions. And so I think that kind of hybrid is really cool as well.
Yeah, there's a game called maybe y'all have heard of it, like Papers, Please.
Oh yeah.
Great game. That was like kind of like a big one where, you're just like, you're letting like people in, like you're an immigration officer, like pretty much letting people in or detaining them. And that's just like, has its own whole set of kind of ideas just like behind that, like, having to actually be in a position where you're not fighting in a war, but you're actually like having to be like,
greatly impacting people's lives.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
I feel like some of the language that we use to describe games is really hard to explain. Like we always talk about feeling, like gameplay is such a feeling.
Yeah.
When we talk about kunai, it feels really good to move around.
Right.
And video games sometimes doesn't have the vocabulary, what like music has. It has those deep subcultures of like punk is different from emo. Emo is different from pop punk, which is different from metal, different from rock, different from shoegaze. Like we all have these like genres to communicate what that musician is giving to the listener. And when trying to make recommendations of like Papers, Please or Goose Game, you explain the gameplay and why it's fun.
That's
right.
That's true.
And sometimes it's really hard to be like, yeah, you should enjoy this game because you're playing as a goose and you get to steal people's stuff and it's really fun. And if you're not a gamer, you're like, okay, yeah, that does sound fun. That sounds great. Tell me more.
Yeah, I think that maybe one of the reasons this is an interesting conversation then, Matthew, too, is right. Like we have these genres of video games, but we don't have terms for some of the stuff we're talking about, right? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Right.
Like we have first person shooter, we have platformer, but then we just have like this sort of vague category of indie or something that like,
that's what I was going to say. The genre is indie, man.
Yeah, Small Talk would be an indie game, but so would Goose Game be an indie game, and they're both very different.
Game,
you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
In various
ways. An
ways.
indie game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like a hybrid of maybe like, in the style, like how movies are described, right? Because movies are like, they have a lot of like music and sound and also visual stuff, and you're moving through rooms. You're not controlling that, but the director is. And, there's ways to describe movies that are kind of like interesting, but maybe there's something like that for games too.
Right. Well, it's so often game genres, and this is kind of its own kind of topic in and of itself, but game genres are so often described in terms of what the gameplay is like how the differences in the gameplay, and not necessarily in the story. Like with a movie, there is no gameplay. So it's like how the story plays out, how you're affected, how you feel. I think that maybe I think horror games would not really fall into that, but I think that might be part of why as well. But I think also we're just coming into an era where gameplay is becoming radically different all the time. We're not in a world where we only get games that are made by the major publishers and only the big AAA games. We get lots of people that get to make experimental sorts of games with all different kinds of gameplay experiences. So yeah, genres become less and less important as time goes on, I think, as well.
Yeah. And you're talking about, we describe it in terms of gameplay. And I think one of the things we've seen a renaissance of in recent times, I don't know, the last 10 years, is this sort of story-driven game and narrative coming into prominence, which it should, right? Like, because you hear these stories about developers bringing a writer on at the very end, and maybe for some games that makes sense, but probably even then it doesn't, right? Like, you know, to put story up front, I think is it's cool to see.
I think it makes it like flow a little bit better with games, right? I think that like having the story integrated from the beginning, same with audio too. It's just going to melt, like, you know, it's like cooking. It's going to mesh better together if it's like all done at the same time instead of it just being like all over the place.
Yeah,
totally. Yeah. I remember you have on here walking simulators, and that always makes me think of like the first time I played the game Myst, I was like a child, you know, I was like 5 or so whenever Myst came out, and I was playing it with my dad, and I remember just being like, but wait, where are all the people that I have to kill? You know what I mean? It was like mind-blowing. I like didn't understand. David. Well, no, I mean, it's, you know, because I'd played
like a killer.
Well, no, I mean, I don't mean like I need blood or I can't enjoy myself, but you know, it's like the first time that I was like, the purpose of a game was to just walk around and take in my surroundings and figure out what's going on. You know what I mean? It's like before that, it had always been so driven by either get to point A to point B or like defeat boss or whatever. Right. And so like, that was just like, it was like hard for me to understand because A, because I was young, and then B, because I had already been primed by all these other examples of what I thought a game was. And I think that's why that game took off, you know, and became, you know, one of the best selling games of all time. Is like, it reached this huge audience that weren't just the core gamers and really, you know, and I think all walking simulators now owe that to Myst personally.
And then I did want to, one last thing I wanted to mention before we maybe talk about some individual games or closing thoughts and stuff would be like the idea of optional violence. I think there aren't, and I know that from a like programming perspective, this is a daunting task, but the idea of a game where you have the choice to engage in combat versus non-combat, in my mind, I've always thought it'd be super cool, for example, if there was like a GTA game where you can play GTA the way it's traditionally been played, or bake people cakes and solve problems, and you know what I mean? Like
obey traffic laws.
Right, or like
you want a game called Law Abiding Citizen.
Yeah. Or like, but there's a choice. And I think, you know, like the classic example here is Undertale. I mean, it's not a classic example because it's still pretty new, classic. But modern classic. Yeah, but like, you know, like, or you'd hear about people who decided to play Skyrim and beat it without killing a single
pacifist runs, right?
Yeah. And you know, it'd be cool to see more games, you know, engage in that choice, though obviously it means twice the work. So.
I tried briefly to do a pacifist run of Cyberpunk 2077. That did not last long, I'll tell you.
People just start shooting at you in that game.
Yeah. It's like I try to go in like stealthily and just like do things, you know, with my conscience, and then I make one sound and then I just have to murder everybody in the room. It sucks.
Or even on the same note of like violence, to highlight the violence or the combat, if it was only part of a game or something, I think that might make it stand out more. I don't know.
Yeah. I think about something like Dan Carlin, who hosts Hardcore History, had a VR experience. And you put on a VR headset and you try to experience what it's like being in World War I and trench warfare for the first time. So it focuses on violence, but it's not necessarily violent because you as a player aren't doing the killing, but you're trying to experience what it was like in the trenches as a soldier. And it's telling the story first. And maybe this is what you're getting to, Patrick, where the intention is the story and not necessarily the story influences the gameplay, not the gameplay influences the story.
Yeah.
That sounds horrifying, by the way.
Does.
Yeah, that's like real life.
Yeah.
Can't wait to escape. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to escape totally.
That's what I'm looking for in my VR experiences is shell shock.
War is bad, everyone. Just a reminder.
If you didn't remember. Cool. Well, I mean, I thought maybe I'd talk about a couple of games that strike me very much, and that's one of them is Wander Song. I talked about it a lot on the podcast, but I think this game, everybody should check it out. Wander Song. It's an exploration of nonviolence in video games. The whole kind of point of it is like you're being egged on to do violence, and you're just singing instead. And the world is ending, kind of like we've talked about. And how are you going to save it by singing? And that kind of thing. And I think it's got some really great little commentary on violence in video games and lots of fun, varied gameplay.
That's been on my list for such a long time. I'll be checking that out after this.
Yeah, that's a big one for me. Obviously, we talked about Animal Crossing. That's another huge example. And there's tons of these games. I've never played Undertale, so I can't really speak to it, but I understand that's obviously a big, because of the choice and the pacifist run, could arguably go into this.
Yeah, like every decision that you make in Undertale like sticks with you, and you can't just like exit out of the game. It's like a decision you made, and it's like integrated into the game itself. It's
Yeah, I mean, it's also, I feel like, a much more fulfilling game if you play it as a pacifist. Like, and it also, it's like you can play it just like a standard RPG where you do battles and stuff like that, but every game is like that. It's like if you choose to do the non-violent path, it's like every battle turns into a unique mini game, or like a dodge the attack, or dodge the little, I don't know how you would describe it, but it's a more fulfilling experience when you play it peacefully. Yeah.
And the other game I talk about a lot too is A Short Hike. And I think one of the reasons why I want to mention A Short Hike is because we're talking about this, like we're talking about game feel. A Short Hike feels wonderful to just run around and play in, but it's also not at all about fighting or combat, right? It's about a short hike. So I think it's, there can be games with good controls and gameplay of a platforming nature that tell stories that aren't violent. Is there any kind of combat in Celeste? I don't think so, right? There's the dark person chasing you, but I don't think you attack them.
Yeah, I think you're just kind of running away the whole time.
Yeah,
but like that's a good example of a platforming game that doesn't include that.
Yeah, I think platformers don't inherently have to have violence, though. Like Mario, you jump on people.
Yeah, I blame Mario for this. Yes, for violence and platformers.
It's more just like self-preservation on a level like get out of there.
Right,
that's true.
Right. Mm-hmm. A couple examples of non-violent games for me, and kind of just genres in general, is like, racing games. Like I love racing games. There's, with the exception of like Mario Kart, I guess.
Or like Twisted Metal or something.
Yeah. But like a Gran Turismo or a Formula One game or something like that. Like it's sports games like that in general. And then also like puzzle games, like I spend probably the majority of my time on my Switch playing puzzle games, playing Picross or Tetris or whatever. And those kinds of games are just like personal like challenges, you know what I mean, and like mind challenges and stuff like that, and I think those have been around since the beginning of gaming. They're just not often spoken of in the same terms as other video games, but yeah, I mean, I just play so much goddamn Picross and there's no violence in that.
Yeah, just going off that a little bit, David, is like you're talking about puzzle games, but puzzle games is such a large bucket. It's Tetris, but it's also Myst.
Right.
It's Puyo Puyo Tetris, but also The Witness is like such a large thing. And I also love puzzle games, and The Witness like blew my mind with just its creativity and puzzles, and makes me feel smart and dumb at the same time.
Yeah. The best games too.
Yeah, and Baba Is You, those puzzles
yeah.
I just like think about for days. Like I'll see a puzzle in Baba Is You, and then I'll just think about it for days, and then it'll just finally hit me what the logic is and trying to solve it. It's super, super fun. Some other cozy games, like we already mentioned, Untitled Goose Game. Something that also I try to like recreate that feeling of coziness. And the first experience that I probably had was probably Katamari Damacy.
Yeah, that's. I think
it's a
I
great
thought about
game.
that game with this topic too, because there is some violence in a sense in that game, but
You're
the
just wrapping up
gameplay
people in a
inherently.
ball, Patrick.
Yeah, but then you throw them into
And they
space.
scream, and
I'm failing to see a problem.
but I think what I think is interesting about it, and I don't mean to step on your toes here because I did want to bring that game up too, is this like the inherent gameplay of that is very satisfying, but it doesn't have to be violent when you're rolling up paper clips and things. It's only when it gets to the animals and people who are running away and screaming.
But to a celestial being like the king of all cosmos, are human lives even lives at all? You know what I mean? It's just specks of dust in the universe. Anyway, sorry, that's never mind. Do you have any good examples, Gabrielle?
Yeah, I guess like one to mention is like, I guess it's not so much cozy, but just it's like Firewatch. Right?
Yeah.
Did y'all ever play that? Yeah, where you're just kind of like walking around, like another one where you're just kind of like trying to figure out like the situation and done without it, like, the violence, I guess, is the fire, right? But it's like a big world kind of violence instead of it just, you against like nature kind of thing, which I kind of like I want to like be explored more. Like maybe that can be something interesting because there's not that many like imagine if like global warming was like a character in a game or some sort of force like that in a game, right? Like that hasn't been done yet. And I feel like that's something that like everyone always wants like this antagonist character or something, but what if it's like something like universal or worldly? Like I think that could be very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I loved Firewatch, and also that's reminded me just like being out in nature of like Lonely Mountains Downhill. That's a great game that's just about biking downhill. And it's not like there aren't stakes. That game is really hard, and if you fall off your bike, you bleed. but it's just about kind of being at peace with nature, and it's so much fun. Love that game. I talk about that game too much on this show.
Well, I think we'll kind of wrap this up. I think this conversation is great because it video games have been around for more than 50 years, but in terms of mainstream video games being really big, they're still pretty new as a medium. And I think we're talking about it like there aren't words and genres to describe some of this stuff, and story coming to the front is pretty new, and there's still a lot to be explored in terms of video games, and I think that's what kind of drives this topic a little bit, and it's interesting to me at least.
Yeah.
Is there anything else y'all want to add, or any closing thoughts about violence or nonviolence in video games?
There's just so many good games and just a richness of experiences that you can have. Everything from you can teabag in Halo to get out your aggression. It's fun for some people, but you also have this deep experience with games like What Remains of Edith Finch when you try to figure out where you came from and who you are as an individual. And that deep understanding of games, like we might know it because we play games all the time, but new gamers are trying to experience these things and find them. And I think there's a lot to offer, especially in this category of like cozy or nonviolent games.
Yeah, I think it comes down to like not being like afraid of trying out those things too. Just like wanting to like reach out of your comfort zone and try out games that are like maybe not necessarily like just to see like how they can connect to you emotionally. And then that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, escapism is cool, but also like it's really nice to have a level of introspection as well when it comes to your media.
Yeah, I think so, for sure. And I think it's like the maturing of the industry and of the medium, right? Like you were saying that, games are, over 50 years old at this point as a medium. But, there's still a ton of growth to be had, and it's growing constantly, and we're opening up into all these new avenues. If you think about films, when movies were 50 years old, it was like the 50s, and movies have grown so much since then. And,
right.
There's all these genres of movies that never existed back then. And there's introspective movies, and there's action movies, and there's romance, and there's all this different kinds of stuff that didn't exist. And so, yeah, I can't wait to see the new kinds of games that come out of this new generation of game developers, that have, games have been around their entire lives, and it doesn't always have to be pigeonholed into one genre or another, or one kind of gameplay. I just think, we're really entering into like a renaissance or a golden age of unique ideas in video games, and that's really exciting to me. And and I can't wait to go shoot more people down in Ace Combat.
No, David, no, that's not what we learned.
I only like to kill.
No, David. Have you learned nothing?
No, I have not.
Awesome. Well, that's it. Then we're ending on that, I think. Great talk. We're going to take another short break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about the violent or non-violent video games that we've been playing recently. All right, so I'm going to go first, and been playing a lot of games this week, actually. Let me decide what to talk about. So I'm going to talk about Super Smash Bros. Ultimate for a minute. I, every once in a while, go into the World of Light and play a little bit of that. I finally completed World of Light. Here we are, roughly 2 years after the game came out.
Yeah, you finally get to change your main menu music.
And I World of Light is a bit of a slog, but there are some really cool sequences at the very end when you, I don't want to even spoil it because there's just some really cool stuff where you get to fight against big, just some cool platforming things and various things that I wasn't prepared or, was surprised by and delighted by after tons of spirit battles.
Definitely a love-hate relationship with World of Light. I do think it's ultimately better than Subspace Emissary, though, from Brawl, the last time they tried to do like a big single-player campaign. I think definitely I'd love to see a single-player explored more in the next Smash. But it is like a fulfilling experience, though,
especially the end. Because the game, it would feel like I'd think I beat the game, and then it would open up a new area. Yeah, and it'd be like, oh, a fucking another area. Like I thought that was the final boss, but the last few things were really fun. And then been playing more Monster Hunter Rise demo with Brian Bonnet, Austin Young, and Adam. That's been fun. My son wanted to play Yoshi's Crafted World again, so we were kind of chipping away at some of the stuff we haven't done in that game. And I'm reminded of how close to being good that game is. It's got a lot of charm and it's a good game, but like playing it in 2-player is very frustrating because you just keep jumping on each other's backs by accident and you keep swallowing each other. And I realize that sounds bad, but like it's just frustrating to play 2-player, and it really shouldn't be, And then I've been playing some Donkey Kong Country 2. I never played that one.
Let's go.
The other night I just got like a little bug to play it. I've been meaning to for a while. It's on the NSO app, and I am kind of addicted to it right now.
Oh, it's incredible. It's one of the best games of all time.
Yeah, I love Donkey Kong Country games, and I never played 2 or 3, so I'm rectifying that right now.
Well, let's play through Donkey Kong Country 3 together.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll play online because you can play those games online.
I will play multiplayer online.
Yeah. All the Super Nintendo and NES games you can play online with friends.
But they're not simultaneous in that game, at least, right? Like you're switching.
Yeah, it's pass back and forth.
But
we'll just chat and hang out.
But anyway, that's what I've been playing. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next. I've been messing with Parsec on PC. We briefly sat in a meeting at PAX last year to learn about Parsec, which is just allows you to play games online with other people. But they have this a section called Arcade, where mostly people will share emulators online, and you can play their emulator games with them. So I was playing Donkey Kong Returns with someone playing on the Wii U emulator, and like Capcom vs. SNK on some MAME emulator and several others. And the technology is kind of blowing my mind, just for the fact that there's a very limited input lag. There's a little bit of lag, but just the fact that I can play these games with other people where these games aren't meant to be played online or can't be played online, and it allows for that to happen.
And they're hosting it, right? Whoever's game it is.
Yeah, they're hosting it. Yeah. And there's some other hacky stuff that you can do to use Parsec to play Switch games. So I've been looking into that. to figure out how to play couch co-op Switch games, something like Luigi's Mansion, like a single player Luigi's Mansion. You can't play it online, but with Parsec you could with some trickery.
Wait, that just also kind of reminds me of the whole, like, you know, quote unquote gamers are really upset about cloud gaming, but it's coming and it's going to be good when it works, right? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like, I think it's somebody on our Discord, Karuseta was talking about that, right? Like, about their experience with Stadia has been good. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a crazy technology, and it's free right now. And it's insane what it can do and the potential. I can kind of see it. And so like Parsec just announced a partnership with Plex to do Plex Arcade. And so they're doing a bunch of Atari games using Parsec as a service.
Interesting.
So at least that company is growing from offering online gaming to different services. It's interesting.
Nice.
Cool. That's what I've been messing with. And I've been playing Wrestling Empire, building out that roster, of course.
Did you make Jay's character yet?
I haven't made Jay's character. No, I had a really long day at work, and I spent probably an hour changing all the fake names to real wrestler names. It was very cathartic.
Very good.
To change text on a game.
That's non-violent.
Very non-violent.
The text changing portion. Yeah.
I fucking destroyed and killed those texts.
I'll go next. Like I said earlier, I've been playing Ace Combat 7, which is, if you like flight games or air combat games, super, super fun. I remember playing the original Ace Combat back on Dreamcast way back in the day, and this is itching all the same itches that I've been missing of this series. So if you have a Game Pass, check it out. It's not on Switch, but it's a very good game. I've been playing some Clubhouse games, 51 World by Classics. Played some Yacht Dice last night, narrowly lost. Still salty about it. Other than that, I mean, it's been a pretty Mario heavy week for me. I've been playing. I played a couple Mario Maker 2 Super Worlds, one of which I played a good amount of with Sasha, and then that kind of led us to play New Super Mario Brothers U Deluxe co-op. So we've been playing some of that, playing through the levels together. So much fun to play those games co-op. I've been really enjoying that. And then, obviously the normal stuff like Picross and whatnot. But I did for Sasha and my 2-year anniversary, which was recently, she got me Mario Kart Live Home Circuit. And I've been playing that recently, and that is fucking fun. I love that so much. It's a lot of fun. I played a lot of it when Cosmo was at the hospital because I didn't want to like stress him out too much by having this car run around. But our other cat, Willow, loves this game because basically, you set up the gates and you make the track and everything. But the most fun thing about it is, it's just cool to see your house from a low angle. Like you're a little tiny dude wandering around this giant house. But then having a cat, it's just like a really unique stage obstacle that you have to deal with. and she'll come up and like bat the car, and then I get thrown off, and then all of a sudden the computer players I'm racing against get way ahead of me, and then I have to fight even harder to get ahead. And it's just fun to see your cat as a giant on your TV. I'm really enjoying it so far. I don't know that I'll play it forever. If nothing else, I'll have a nice Mario Kart toy that I can put on a shelf somewhere. But for the time being, I'm really enjoying the game. And if you have the game and COVID is over, hit me up because I'd love to play some multiplayer with people because it's a pretty fun experience and I've been having a great time. Gabrielle, what have you been playing recently?
Yeah, so I guess I'm kind of like haven't been playing too many recent things.
Mm-hmm.
But I did finally, and this is probably like sold for everybody, and everyone's like, "What? Like, why are you just playing this now?" But it's Breath of the Wild.
Oh hell yeah!
Like I finally got around to it, and
We've heard of it.
playing it, and it's really good. Like everybody said.
Yeah.
And I know.
It's
like, yeah.
What are you doing in Breath of the Wild? Are you the kind of person that's just running around to see what's over the hill, or are you trying to do missions?
Like I will run and I will just like climb a mountain, and like I don't even care if I don't have enough stamina. Like I'll just make a bunch of food, and like I just want to get over it. I don't even want to fight the main monsters or just like complete the game. I guess I just want to like, even though it's like way out leveled, I'm like, screw it, I'm gonna do it anyways.
It's so satisfying in that game to just explore.
Yeah, I'm kind of like that in Skyrim too. Like from the beginning, there's like the main quest, and I'm like, nope, and I just like beeline into the woods.
Let me see if I can jump across this mountain on my horse.
yeah, or like fight a dragon, and it's just like you're like you have like no health.
Yeah. Oh man, that's great. There's never a bad time to play Breath of the Wild.
I think so too. I think it's like
Yeah.
But yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Awesome. I think that does it for this episode then. Thank you so much, Gabrielle, for coming on to talk.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Us.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's been a long time coming. I've been wanting to get you on the show for a while, and this seemed like a great topic for you.
Yeah, no, this is perfect.
And,
thank you.
Thanks to MilkyWay.co, who did our website. Thanks to Corduroy, who does our music. If you're looking for me, Patrick, online, I am PDYX.
Hey, I'm on Twitter, Matthew, MATHYOU.
I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet at Monolith Fiji. And what about you, Gabrielle? Where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter mostly at Alora Datura. So yeah, find me there.
And also check out the game, right, when it comes out?
Yeah, check out Small Talk. Yep.
Yeah, you can find that on paleroom.itch.io/smalltalk. That's going to be great. Can't wait for that game to come out. I'm not going to pressure you about the release date, but I cannot wait to play it.
Thanks.
And folks, if you'd like to find our show on social media, we are at Switch Headz on Twitter, at Super Switch Headz on Facebook and Instagram. And then, of course, we've got our website now, www.switchheadz.com or www.superswitchheadz.com. You can find all the links to our Facebook group, to our Discord, and whatnot. So if you're interested in joining the community, both of those are a great way to be a part of the Switch Headz group. It's a great group of people. Very much feeling the love for the community as we're nearing 100 episodes. And do not forget, this upcoming Tuesday, we will be having our big bash, our 100th episode spectacular. We're doing it live. Fuck it. Fucking thing sucks. I don't know. Does anybody remember that reference anymore?
Oh, sure. I think about it all the time.
Cool. But anyway, we're doing it on YouTube, and we'll be taking your questions, and we're going to have some very special guests. We're having more than just one special guest this time. That's how you know this is a special episode. It's going to be a great time, so make sure you tune in for that this upcoming Tuesday, February 2nd at 7:30 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to this episode on Nonviolent Games. We can't wait for this episode next week. But in the meantime, stay safe out there. Get vaccinated. Keep wearing a mask. We love you very much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.